When Donald Trump speaks directly to Jews, he uses Kabbalistic codes which Gentiles don't understand. When Trump says to his Jewish listeners that he is going to put anti-Semites to death, what he is really saying is that he is the Messiah, son of Joseph, and will exterminate all Gentiles. When Trump tells American Jews that they are not loyal enough to Israel because they vote Democrat and not for him, what he's really telling his Jewish audience is that this generation of American Jews in exile is not worthy to receive the Messiah, son of David, and is delaying the redemption, the Messiah, the temple, and the complete extermination of all the Amalekite Goyim. Their failure to anoint Trump is delaying the arrival of the world to come and King Messiah, and they are missing out on the opportunity to achieve immortality and realize all the Messianic promises.
This evil anti-Semitic attack is an assault on all of us. It's an assault on humanity. It will require all of us working together to extract the hateful poison of anti-Semitism from our world. This was an anti-Semitic attack at its worst. The scourge of anti-Semitism cannot be ignored, cannot be tolerated, and it cannot be allowed to continue. We can't allow it to continue. It must be confronted and condemned everywhere it rears its very ugly head. We must stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters to defeat anti-Semitism and vanquish the forces of hate. That's what it is. And those seeking their destruction, we will seek their destruction. Now, when you have crimes like this, whether it's this one or another one on another group, we have to bring back the death penalty. They have to pay the ultimate price. They have to pay the ultimate price. They can't do this. They can't do this to our country. We must draw a line in the sand and say very strongly, never again.
Kabbalists believe that all Gentiles are the offspring of Satan through their progenitor Cain, whose soul passed through to Esau, and all non-Jews who are called Amalekites and who must be exterminated because they supposedly bear a congenital predisposition to genocide the Jews. These beliefs are clearly understood by all the Jews listening to Trump call upon them to elect him as the Messiah, son of Joseph, whose primary task is to exterminate the supposedly anti-Semitic Goyim. The Kabbalistic process of Tikkun Olam is fulfilled by the Messiah anointed for war, Messiah, son of Joseph. Rectifying the world means eliminating the evil other side of anti-Semitic Gentiles, thereby ridding creation of these evil shells which conceal and darken the holy light of the Jews. Two Messiahs exist in every generation, but will only succeed and prove to the world that they are the real Messiahs when the Jewish people in exile prove themselves worthy to accomplish the messianic tasks of exterminating the Gentiles, building the temple, ingathering the Jews, and anointing King Messiah to rule the world to come without any Goyim. Chabad Lubavitch worked tirelessly to create these end-times conditions during the lifetime of their false Messiah, Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who died a failure in 1994. Schneerson desperately demanded Jews and Gentiles manifest all the requirements for him to be officially and openly acknowledged as the King of the Jews. Schneerson failed, but his followers Netanyahu, Putin, and Trump have not given up on the messianic quest, and instead are attempting to use the full force of war and law to impose the Messiah's rule upon the world, exterminate the Gentiles, build the temple, and ingather the Jews. In order for them to succeed, American Jews, the Jews in exile, must prove themselves worthy as have the Jews of Israel. Should they fail to do so, the plan calls for them, together with 2/3 of Jewry, to be holocausted to cleanse their souls of the impurity of the evil inclination and mixed multitude so that the next generation will prove itself worthy of its two Messiahs. Trump is using Kabbalistic codes which are understood by his Jewish audience, but not by Gentiles. Trump tells Jews that he is the Messiah son of Joseph, who is expanding Israel and waging war on the supposedly anti-Semitic Goyim. Trump is letting Jews know that they are being tested, and that if they fail the test and prove that this generation is not worthy of the Messiah, then they will be destroyed. In order to pass the test, the worthy generation must commit itself to and succeed in genociding the Gentiles, building the temple, anointing the Messiah son of David, and conquering greater Israel. Anything less, and they themselves must suffer the wrath that would have been inflicted on the Goyim, so that their souls can be cleansed to produce a worthy generation of Jews in the future.
The issue of whether he could be Mashiach is more or less a technical issue. When he was alive, there was no question he could have been Mashiach. And indeed, when the Messianic speculation first began to surface in the 70s, the Rebbe's Mashiach, so somebody went to Reb Moshe Feinstein, who was still alive, and said, "You have to issue a proclamation. They're saying the Rebbe's Mashiach." So Reb Moshe Feinstein said, "So what would be so bad if the Rebbe would be Mashiach? Why not?" And keep in mind the following point. If Mashiach can come every day, we believe that. That means there is somebody in the world today that would be Mashiach. There has to be. And 100 years ago there was somebody, and 200 years ago there was somebody, and 500 years ago there was somebody, because if there wouldn't be somebody, the Mashiach couldn't have come. So every generation, there is what you might call a potential Mashiach of that generation. Does that potential person know? Not necessarily. He may live and die, without ever knowing that he was the guy if the Jewish people were deserving. Right? So Mashiach doesn't know he's Mashiach yet until Hashem decides to reveal himself. So could the Rebbe have been the Mashiach? For sure. He certainly met the qualifications of righteousness descended from David HaMelech. Okay. You could argue, you can go through the Rambam's list. You can say it mentions he'll fight the wars of God. Okay, but that could mean different things. That could mean fighting assimilation. It doesn't have to mean an army, so to speak. The question is, though, once somebody dies, and I'm assuming the Rebbe died. I'm not going with there are extreme views that the Rebbe didn't even die. Okay, I'm not going there. But assuming he died on the 3rd of Tammuz, so can Mashiach come back as Mashiach if he died? Now, Christianity believes yes. In fact, that was the problem with Christianity, because Yashka was initially claimed to be a Messiah, but he didn't do anything. He didn't build a temple. He didn't bring back the Jews from the Galus. So Christianity invented the second coming to deal with that particular problem. Yeah, he didn't do it the first time. He'll come back the second time. Ramban, however, says in a famous debate that he had with a Jewish apostate that Judaism does not believe in a second coming. Once somebody is proclaimed to be Mashiach, he has to finish the job. He will die, Mashiach will die, but he has to finish the job. If he doesn't finish the job, that's a sign that he was not the designated Mashiach for that generation. So that's what the Ramban says. And I would also point out there's a certain logic to that, because if you're going to go with the idea that Mashiach can come back from the dead, then why should it be Lubavitcher Rebbe? Why can't it be David HaMelech? Why can't it be earlier people once they're going to come back from the dead? There's no reason why it has to be the last one. So as a result, I think most of the Torah world, even those who are very pro-Lubavitch, I'm not counting the anti-Lubavitch, even the pro-Chabad people believe that the Rebbe will not come back as the Melech HaMashiach because he died before he completed his mission. Perhaps he could have been Mashiach had the generation been worthy of him revealing himself. Now, Chabad claims, and again, this is a legitimate discussion, that there are some Makoros, some sources, that take issue with the Ramban and do believe that the Mashiach can come back from the dead. And that's not, now people say, well, isn't that Christianity? Well, yeah, it is, but it's a different guy. I mean, the fact that second coming is a Christian idea is not proof that it can't also be a Jewish idea. I mean, that's not really an argument, right? People always say, that can't be because that's Christianity. Well, okay. I mean, We don't believe that Yeshua is Mashiach for a different Rebbe, but the Rebbe could be. So Chabad does have some sources that say Mashiach can come back from the dead. The Abarbanel brings such a thing. There is a possible Gemara in Sanhedrin that might be understood that way. It might be, because there are different ways of interpreting the Gemara. So I always tell people that if you believe Mashiach can come back from the dead, you cannot be called an apikoros. You cannot be called a kofar. There is a basis for that view, but it seems that most would regard you as mistaken.
Donald Trump is demanding that the Jews of America fashion themselves into the generation of Jews in exile worthy of the Messiah, and he is pledging to exterminate the Gentiles if they do so and help Jewry achieve all of its messianic ambitions. Trump is telling Jews in coded Kabbalistic terms that they have to vote for him because he is the Gentile Messiah, son of Joseph, and that if they don't elect him to fulfill the tasks of Messiah, son of Joseph, then Messiah, son of David cannot arrive in their generation. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz recognized the belief that every generation has potential messiahs, but the generation of Jews must be worthy. This is, apparently, based on the continuation of the Gemara, where it is taught that in every generation there are individuals who are worthy of being the Messiah, but because the time has not yet come, he cannot be crowned as such. The students sitting in the various study halls each saw their own rabbi as being the one most likely to play that role in that generation. Rebbe Schneerson was keen to point out that his generation of Jews could be the one to receive the Messiah if they became worthy, and that he was the Messiah. Schneerson pleaded his case. Mashiach in every generation. The relevance of the above is made possible by the unique nature of our present times. To borrow an expression of the previous Rebbe, we have already polished the buttons and have completed all the elements of service required of us. Furthermore, Mashiach is not merely a hope for the future, but there exists in every generation, and surely, in our generation, a person from among the descendants of Judah who is worthy of being the Mashiach of Israel. As the Chasam Sofer writes, "From the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, there was born one who in his righteousness is worthy of being Israel's Redeemer, and were there no impediments and obstacles which prevented his coming, he would have come already. Moreover, these obstacles no longer exist, for when the service of the Jewish people over the centuries is considered as a whole, everything that is necessary to bring about the redemption has been accomplished. There is no valid explanation for the continuation of the exile. Accordingly, at this time, our spiritual service must focus on standing prepared to greet Mashiach, anxiously awaiting his revelation with the willingness to accept him eagerly." Chabadpedia lists the unmistakable attributes of the Messiah and ascribes them to Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson. In our generation, the man identified by Jews around the world as the leader of the generation, and thus also the Moshiach of the generation, is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe's name is the name of Moshiach. As the Gemara says, Menachem is the name of Moshiach. The Rebbe adds Mendel. Now that you can understand what Trump truly means by what he is saying in Kabbalistic code, let's have a listen to his cryptic speeches portending our demise and his pledge to be Messiah, son of Joseph, and give rise to Messiah, son of David, and the world to come, Olam Haba.
We love Israel, and we will save Israel, and we will fight with Israel. And the place went wild. I said, what the hell is going on? They love Israel. I hate to say it. Sometimes they love Israel much more than Jewish people in New York love Israel. We're on. If we continue down our current path with 4 more years of Kamala, Israel will be faced not just with an attack, but with total annihilation. And I hate to say it so much. It's total annihilation. That's what you're talking about. You don't have a protector. You have a big protector in me. You don't have a protector on the other side. And I've said long and loud, anybody, and especially over the last few years, anybody who's Jewish and loves being Jewish and loves Israel is a fool if they vote for a Democrat. But beyond that, If they love Israel, anybody that votes for a Democrat or Kamala especially, because this is the worst ever. This is the worst you've ever had. This one makes Barack Hussein Obama look like he loved Israel by comparison. But you should have your head examined, because it will face an unceasing bloody war to obliterate the Jewish state and drive Jews out of the Holy Land. That's what they want to do. They want to drive Jews out of the Holy Land. Israel and Jewish people are attacked by the media that I can't even believe. The New York Times is controlled by a Jewish family. I don't think there's anybody worse to Israel than the New York Times is. I read articles about Israel that I know are false. If you want Israel to survive, you need Donald J. Trump as the 47th president of the United States. Under my leadership, America will once again stand shoulder to shoulder with our friend and ally, the State of Israel. Right now, all they do is fight the State of Israel. Don't do this, don't do that. I will always defend Israel's fundamental right to exist as a Jewish nation in the Jewish homeland. That's what it's about, isn't it? If Kamala Harris wins instead of the most pro-Israel president ever, which I have been already declared to be, you will have the most anti-Israel president by far, far worse than Barack Hussein Obama. Israel will not exist within 2 years if she becomes president. Done. Just as I promised, I recognize Israel's eternal capital and opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. Jerusalem became the capital. I also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. You know, Miriam and Sheldon would come into the White House probably almost more than anybody outside of people that work there. And they were always after, and as soon as I'd give them something, always for Israel. As soon as I'd give them something, they'd want something else. I'd say, give me a couple of weeks, will you please? But I gave them the Golan Heights, and they never even asked for it. You know, for 72 years, I'm telling you, Israel has no chance. Jewish people that love Israel have no chance. If you want to eliminate Israel, we will throw you out of our country so rapidly your head will spin. And to confront the crisis of anti-Semitism at our universities, I will tell college presidents that they must end the anti-Semitic propaganda, or they will lose their accreditation and they will lose all federal support. This is the most important election in the history of the United States, and it's also the most important election in the history of Israel. Can you imagine that? A non-Israeli election is the single most important election that Israel will ever have. Isn't that something? With all I have done for Israel, I received only 24% of the vote. But I understood that. That was in 2016. And, you know, it's one of those things I thought I'd do much better. I happen to have a Jewish daughter. I have a Jewish son-in-law. I have 3 Jewish grandchildren. I thought I'd do much better. But I only got 24%. Think of that. And then I became president of the United States and was the best president ever for Israel and for the Jewish people by far. Nobody was close. I was there 4 years, gave them billions and billions of dollars. I was the best friend Israel ever had. And still in 2020, now I've done all these things, so now Jewish people have no excuse. I got 29%. I went from 25 to 29%. Think of that. Honestly, you didn't treat yourselves well. You didn't. It was a terrible thing. And what made me even more upset about it is the current polling has just been announced. Now, I just announced the polls and I'm now polling at about 40%. That means 60% of Jewish people are going to vote for Kamala or a Democrat. And honestly, you ought to have your heads examined. You ought to have your heads examined. And those votes may be necessary for us to win. I say us to win because we're in this together. But who are these people? Who are the 60% that would vote? And I really believe that bad things, very bad things are going to happen. And I'll put it to you very simply and as gently as I can. I wasn't treated properly by the voters who happen to be Jewish. I don't know, do they know what the hell is happening? If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens, because at 40%, that means 60% of the people are voting for the enemy. Israel, in my opinion, will cease to exist within 2 years. If I do win, Israel will be safe and secure, and we will stop the toxic poison of anti-Semitism from spreading here. All over America, it's spreading. It's spreading like it's never spread before. I've never seen anything like it. I really believe it would be obliteration, and it'll happen quickly, too. It's very close to happening. With your vote, we will reject anti-Semitism in our schools, reject it in our foreign policy. We will reject it in our immigration system, and we will save the state of Israel on November 5th, 2024. It will be the most important day in the history of Israel. So I say 47 days from now, we're going to defeat Kamala Harris. You have to defeat Kamala Harris. More than any other people on earth, Israel, I believe, has to defeat her. You know that? And I've never said this before. I'm thinking, Miriam, more than any people on earth, Israel has to defeat her. We've gathered today to talk about the scourge of anti-Semitism tonight. Instead, even here in America, Jewish citizens have been forced to endure the worst outbreak of anti-Semitism in many generations. 15 years ago, Israel was the strongest lobby, if you want to use the word lobby, had the strongest representation of people like this. These are great people, Miriam. But the strongest there was, if you said something about a Jewish person or something about Israel that was bad, you were out of politics. I'm here today to tell the Jewish American community that this ugly tide of anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas bigotry and hate will be turned back and crushed starting at noon on January 20th, 2025. They want Jew haters from overseas, and they let them come in and resettle in your communities right here at home, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. My promise to Jewish Americans is this: with your vote, I will be your defender, your protector, and I will be the best friend Jewish Americans have ever had in the White House. I'm calling on Kamala Harris to officially disavow the support of all Hamas sympathizers, anti-Semites, Israel haters on college campuses and everywhere else. Any Jewish person that votes for her, especially now, her or the Democrat Party, should have their head examined. And here's what I will do to defeat anti-Semitism and defend our Jewish citizens in America. My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support. The United States election is the most important election in the history of Israel, actually. And then I became president and was the best president ever for the people of Israel and for Jewish people, the best president ever. And I did more for them than any president has, and probably any president can do or will do, other than the current situation that's coming up, because I have a feeling that maybe that's going to be more than anything that was even done in the past, if you want to know the truth, because I think Israel's in big trouble. And I was helped a lot by Jared and a lot of other people that really understood what was going on. But I recognized the capital of Israel and opened the embassy in Jerusalem. On top of everything else, I gave them more than $20 billion, Israel. And I said, when I did it, I said, I'm the best friend they ever had. And still, in 2020, so remember, I got 25%. Now I did all of these things, and I got 29%. Think of it. So I wasn't treated right. But it's not me that's been treating badly, it's Israel, because you can make a big difference in the vote. You're going to be a big factor in the vote. I will say places like Miami and different places were great. But honestly, I went from 25 to 29, and based on what I did and based on my love of the same love that you have, I should be at 100. I should be at 100. But let me give you the bad news. A poll, I just told you how good the polls are, but we need every vote we can get. The current polling has me with Jewish citizens, Jewish people that's supposed to love Israel. After having done all of that, having been the best president, the greatest president by far, a poll just came out. I'm at 40%. That means you got 60% voting for somebody that hates Israel. And I say it's going to happen. It's only because of the Democrat hold or curse on you. You can't let this happen. 40% is not acceptable because we have an election to win. So after all of this, I went from 29 to 40%. And people that are smart said to me, friend of mine Jewish, friend of mine loves Israel, loves everything about your religion and about your country, your place. He said, I can't believe it's happening. It's sad. And he started to cry, actually. He started to cry. With all of this, and he's a tough cookie. I don't think he cried since he was a little tiny baby. Maybe then I don't think he cried. I don't think he cried then, Miriam. But I will put it to you very simply and gently. I really haven't been treated right, but you haven't been treated right because you're putting yourself in great danger. And the United States hasn't been treated right. So if I don't win this election, and I've been very good, they say Trump's been right about everything. I've been right about a lot of things. Even Ted will admit that. I've been right about a lot of things that a lot of people said, no, that won't happen, but a lot of bad things happened, and some good things I've been right about too. And I only want to be, so I'm not going to call this as a prediction, but in my opinion, the Jewish people would have a lot to do with a loss. If I'm at 40%, if I'm at 40%, think of it. That means 60% are voting for Kamala, who in particular is a bad Democrat. The Democrats are bad to Israel, very bad. They'll never change because they have a section of their party now which has become amazingly and quickly very powerful vote-wise. I mean, Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian. Who would have thought that was going to happen? What the hell happened to him? I saw him the other day. He was dressed in one of their robes. That'll be next. No, Chuck Schumer is Hamas all the way. I don't know what the hell happened to him. If you support him, you're crazy. I have never seen his change may be bigger than Kamala on fracking in Pennsylvania, okay? But if we don't win this election, Israel, in my opinion, within a period of 2 to 3 years, will cease to exist. It's going to be wiped out. That's what's going to happen. It's a tough thing to say, but what difference does it make from my standpoint? I have to tell you the truth, and maybe you'll be energized because there's no way that I should be getting 40% of the vote. I'm the one that's protecting you. These are the people that are going to destroy you, and you have 60% of the Jewish people essentially voting for them. If I do win, Israel will be safe and secure, and we will stop the toxic poison of anti-Semitism from spreading all over America and all over the world. We'll get it stopped. But if I don't win, I believe Israel will be eradicated, and you can't let that happen, and I don't think you will let that happen. So you have to, Rabbi, you have to get everybody together, and you have to get them to vote, because it's craziness to say, I'm at 40%. And when I heard that number today, it just came out today. When I heard that number today, I think it was insulting to our country. It was insulting to Israel. It's very interesting. They did a poll in Israel. I'm like at 99% favorable. I could run for, right now, I could run for any office in Israel. In Israel, they love me. Here, not so much. So we have to save Israel. Look, you're here for a reason. We have to save Israel. This is no longer games. This is no longer games. This is the saving of Israel. And I'm going to mention it. We're making a big statement in a little while at another conference, also very important. And I'm going to mention it again and again. I believe that Israel will be wiped off the face of the earth if I don't win, where even Jewish people are protesting in these groups. They're Jewish people. People wearing yarmulkes are in these groups that are protesting with 100,000 people. And the real fight is to save Israel. And in America, the evil anti-Semitism is rampaging all throughout our cities. The Democrat Party, our left-wing media institutions, a certain candidate for the President of the United States, which is hard to believe, and our colleges and universities, they're going loco. They've gone loco. Something's wrong with them. Never seen this. I never thought this could happen. Do you know, just to get off for a second, years ago, my father was a big supporter of Jewish people and Israel. He's not Jewish. He wasn't Jewish, but he was a great friend of a lot of Jewish people. And if you said, let's say 15 years ago, maybe not even that long, anything bad about Israel or Jewish people, you were finished as a politician, right? You were finished. You wouldn't do that, Congressman. You wouldn't do it anyway, but nobody would do it. The most powerful lobby in this country by far was Israel and Jewish people. Today, it's almost like, what happened? What happened? What happened to Schumer? What happened to all these people? Schumer's like a Palestinian, right? It's a Palestinian. You got to remember that, though. It's, it's shocking because I grew up where Israel was, was supported. My father was a builder in Brooklyn, and a lot of Jewish people. That's all he knew. That's all I knew, essentially. But we knew Jewish people, and they were great people. And we'd go to many events. I'd go with him. But the power, Miriam, of this lobby, this powerful, and it was for good, not for bad, of being Jewish and of Israel. And unfortunately, they're not necessarily the same, because you have Jewish people living in New York who really don't support. You look at the New York Times, and they do not support Israel, and I don't think they support Jewish people, you want to know the truth. The toxic poison of anti-Semitism now courses through the veins of radical Democrat Party. I mean, this is a radical group of people. I never thought I'd see that either. They have gone crazy. We're here tonight because we believe that this vicious outbreak of militant and anti-Semitism is very militant, must be given no quarter, no safe harbor, no place in a civilized society. We must reject it in our schools, reject it in our foreign policy, reject it in our immigration system, and reject it at the ballot box this November. You know, Jewish people have to not vote by habit. You vote by habit for Democrats, and the Democrats are really against you now. If you look at what they're doing, they're absolutely against you. Yeah. But we must declare that without hesitation that what happened to Paris and happened to London, have you seen what's going on? And what happened to Europe will never happen here. But it is happening. It is happening. They say that going to the Democrat convention next week are going to be hundreds of thousands of people that are opposed to Israel. It's their big problem. That's their thing. And not even believable, but hundreds of thousands they're projecting right now, hundreds of thousands. That's a lot. We will not let a jihad. There will be no jihad coming to America under Trump. The biggest strength that Israel has is they know that, like with me or somebody else perhaps, but fewer and fewer people, but they know with me that they have total protection. So we have to win the election. When I'm back in the Oval Office, I will support Israel's right to win its war on terror. They have to have a right to win the war. What's going on now is exactly what was going on before the Holocaust. If Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are elected, the radical left flag burners and Hamas sympathizers will not just be causing chaos on our streets, they'll be running U.S. foreign policy in the White House, and Israel will be gone. If Kamala wins, terrorist armies will wage an unceasing war to drive Jews out of the Holy Land. Together, we will confront the forces of anti-Semitism, and we will win, win, win. Save Israel, right? Save Israel.
Donald Trump is the third member of the Chabad-Lubavitch troika of Netanyahu, Putin, and Trump. If Trump again wins office, these three Chabadniks will be in a position to artificially fulfill Jewish apocalyptic messianic prophecy and complete the destruction of the present world in order to bring into existence the planned world to come. Not just these three, but the vast majority of world leaders are aggressively and unnecessarily imposing the horrors of the so-called birth pangs of the Messiah on humanity. If they continue to rule over us, they will inflict the worst disasters to befall mankind imaginable, including extermination. Trump is calling upon American Jews to become the generation worthy to destroy humanity and anoint the Messiah of the Jews.